Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kara and today I'm going to be doing the ice cream book tag, which was created by Kristin of Super Space Chick and Alexa of Alexa Love Books, who I will link down below. Now, I wasn't tagged to do this, but I just thought it looked like a lot of fun and I wanted to do it before we completely lost the warm weather. So here we go. The first question is Vanilla Ice Cream, a book you wish had more flavor. Now this one, I don't actually have a copy of the book anymore because I didn't enjoy it. And it is Entwined by Heather Dixon. I know a lot of people really enjoyed this one. It was really popular a few years back. It's a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses story. And I really enjoy fairy tale retellings in general, but this one I just felt kind of fell flat for me. The characters were completely interchangeable. The plot was a little bit haphazard. The villain wasn't very good. I didn't think the writing style was anything special. It was okay, but it didn't really make up for the rest of my issues with the book. And ultimately, I just really didn't enjoy that one, and I wish I had because a lot of people were saying it was a great retelling. Question number 2 is Chocolate, a long book or one with an immersive world that you could indulge in. So for this one, I'm going to go with Serafina by Rachel Hartman. Now this is a fantasy book, and in this world there are dragons who can sort of take the forms of humans, but everybody knows that they're doing this, and they're at a very tense place right now with the peace treaty. So there's a lot of political intrigue, a lot of court interactions going on, but I loved this book, and even though the world is a little bit complicated, I never felt lost or confused because it's all developed so gradually and so naturally. Like, by the time I finished this book, I felt like I really understood the kingdom of Gored. It just felt like so real to me in a way that, you know, some other fantasy books don't necessarily. Even if they're really good, you don't necessarily feel like you have a handle on the world or where the story takes place. But this one, I definitely did, and I highly recommend it. Next question is Strawberry, a book with a romance that was super sweet. This one I'm going to give to Cotillion by Georgette Heyer. Now, Georgette Heyer wrote Regency romance primarily. She did a lot of them, and this one is still my favorite that I've read of hers. And that is mainly due to Freddie, the love interest. Now, Freddie is not your typical kind of Regency romance, you know, romantic interest. He's not a rake, he's not a womanizer, he's just like sweet and funny and smarter than he looks, and he's just like really charming and engaging because he doesn't realize he is, and he's just such a wonderful character. And it just made such a refreshing change from, you know, the alpha male love interest or the ones who kind of bully the main character, or, you know, I love villains or anti-heroes, and I love hate to love relationships. But sometimes it's nice to have one that's sweeter than that, and Freddie just takes the cake for me. And in the paraphrased words of Kitty, our main character, it's all well and good for a man to slay dragons for you, but what you really need is someone who can get you out of a social fix. And Freddie can. The next question is Ice Cream Sundae, a book with all of the elements that you love. I'm not going to pick Harry Potter for this because that would be too easy, but I am going to pick The Wee Free Men by Terry Pratchett. And this book has fantasy, and it plays with tropes, and there's humor and compassion and heart, and a main character who isn't the chosen one, but she decides she has to be because no one else is going to do it. And she's flawed, and she always tries to make the best decision, but sometimes she doesn't. And this book is just such a wonderful exploration of fantasy, and I feel like it really represents why I keep coming back to it as a genre. It's just so engaging, and it still feels very real. Next is Milkshake, a book that blends genres. This one, I have Drink, Slay, Love by Sarah Beth Durst. Now this is a vampire contemporary book with elements of the mafia thrown in. So there's definitely a lot in the blender. But I feel like Sarah Beth Durst really pulls it off. It's so fun, it's so lighthearted. It sort of makes fun of the usual paranormal tropes while still kind of having fun with them and using them to some degree. And we have a great main character who's like the sassiest vampire you've ever read, and at the beginning of the book she actually gets stabbed by a unicorn, and that sort of sets off the entire zany plot. And all that being said, you know, it's a very humorous book, but there's also some great moments of character development and looking at family and what kind of loyalty you owe them, and it's just a really great read and I highly recommend it. Next we have Sprinkles, a book with a colorful cover. And this one, I just had to pick City of Stars by Mary Hoffman because look at that. Look at that beautiful rainbow. Incidentally, this is also one of my favorite books in the series. Now this is a fantasy series set in sort of an alternate universe Italy, and we follow different protagonists in every book, and basically they're troubled teens who find portals to this other world. And there's a reason that they go there. They each have sort of this purpose there, and we get to meet all of these really great supporting characters, and there's a lot of interweaving plot lines, and the writing and story isn't overly complex. Like, I would definitely say this is near the younger end of young adult, but I really love this series, and you just get so invested in the story and the characters, and it's just a really great book. And again, beautiful cover. How could you not want to pick that up? The next question is Ice Cream Cake, a book worthy of celebration. And for this one, I'm going to pick Rejected Princesses by Jason Porlath. Now this is, as the title implies, sort of a collection of women and girls throughout history who sort of don't fit our mold of, Disney princesses or princess stories in general. They're not demure, they do a lot of things that people are surprised at and that cause trouble, but they have such strength and character, and it's just, oh, you just want to stand up and cheer for some of them. And some of the stories are, sadder than others. Like, they definitely aren't afraid to go to really dark places, but the illustrations are just so cool, and I feel like the author does a really great job of using the historical record and things that we can consider to be factual, and then pointing out some of the most convincing theories about these women and sort of ranking them by how likely they are. So he does do some interpretation of the stories, but I feel like Jason Porlath really kind of keeps it grounded in the historical record, and it's just such a great book, and I just love it. It makes you feel like so proud to be a girl, and it's just, I think it would be a great thing for girls of any age to read. Not necessarily girls, because everybody should read some strong women. Next is Ice Cream Cookie Sandwich, or 3 Scoops of Ice Cream, and that is a book with multiple perspectives. And for that one, I picked My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. And this book features the perspectives of Lady Jane Grey, who was famously queen for only a few days, her reluctant fiancé G, and her cousin King Edward. And this book is just the most irreverent and sassy and hilarious take on history I think I've ever read. There's a lot of fun with humor and character, and the dialogue is just hilarious, and it's a really great sort of historical comedy fantasy with just a sprinkling of animal shape-shifting in there. And I think this one is good to go into not really knowing too much, just kind of go along for the ride. The next question is Waffle Cone, a book you felt compelled to read very quickly. For this one, I chose Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Now this book is, let's see, more than 650 pages, but I read this in like less than 24 hours because I was coming back from an international flight, and I had a lot of, time waiting to get on the plane, or like waiting once we were on board or flying and all of that, so I needed a book. And I finished this one so quickly, even though it was so long. I've only read, I think, 3 Brandon Sanderson novels, but I feel like you get to that point in one of his books where you just realize, like, well, I'm not going to sleep until I finish this, so it's time to get going. And you just kind of like power through until the end because things get really intense. And I feel like this is another one where it's really good to go into not knowing too much about the plot or the characters because it's really fun to discover it as you go. There's a couple of princesses who are sisters, and there's a lot of politics, and there's an incredibly cool magic system, as is par for the course with Brandon Sanderson. And yeah, this one will definitely have you burning the midnight oil even though it's so long. And the last book question, but not the last tag question, is Pint, a book you set aside but you plan to go back to later. And this one, I chose this absolute doorstopper, which is, of course, Les Mis by Victor Hugo. Now this edition is, I think, over 1,400 pages, and I don't usually get scared by big books because, if you're enjoying it, I feel like it doesn't really matter and you'll kind of read it pretty quickly anyway. But this one, I've tried to read this a couple times now, and I don't think I ever got past like 50 pages or so. And Victor Hugo is an incredible writer. I'm reading an English translation of his original work, but he's an incredibly accomplished author. But he does tend to be very wordy, and he takes these sort of tangents that go off on things that aren't really important to the story, but he spends like 25 pages on them anyway, and it's a very long process to read, I think, any amount of this book, so I definitely want to read it. I enjoyed what I read, but at this point, I'm not going to be reading it right away. And then the last group of questions are just some really fun ones about your ice cream preferences. The first one is cup or cone, and this one I actually used to always get a cup of ice cream because it was easier to eat and I felt like you got more ice cream and I just liked it a lot better. But recently I've kind of been enjoying cones because it's like you get 2 desserts instead of 1. So that's my wishy-washy answer for that one. And then favorite flavor, I would have to go with mint chocolate chip because it's hard to beat. I love mint flavors and I love chocolate, so to put them together just makes sense. The next question is toppings, yes or no? And I'm gonna kind of cheat again and say sometimes, because if it's just like a normal ice cream place and you're just stopping by for like a quick pick-me-up, then I won't bother with toppings. But if it's something like frozen yogurt or like a really fancy ice cream place where you're supposed to like, where part of the experience is choosing toppings, then I will usually put some form of sour candy on there, probably some chopped peanuts, and you know, maybe some sprinkles, because it's hard to turn down that many toppings, you know? The next question is your favorite local ice creamery. And this one I'm going to pick Creamistry in San Diego, which is where I went to school. And their whole thing is that they use, I think it's liquid nitrogen, to freeze their ice cream. And it makes it like really like thick and like smooth and like really creamy. It's like almost the texture of gelato, but slightly different. And it is so good. It's very overpriced. It's very expensive ice cream, but I still think it's worth it. It's just so good. And then finally, last but not least, is best shared with friends, which is who do you tag? And I'm just gonna say that anyone watching this who thinks that this looks like fun, I'm tagging you because it's a lot of fun, and I know it's October, but you can still have ice cream in October, so go ahead and do it if you think it's fun. That was the ice cream book tag, and I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye!